Modern day consoles, they've become a lot more like PCs. However, some would say that they should PCs nuts. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I've heard people say that for sure, yeah.
I haven't.
No,
This was all to put you on the spot.
I just,
How you doing today?
do really well, thanks for asking.
T's here. We're going to talk about modern day consoles and 5 things that they don't really do very well. These are problems with modern day consoles that old consoles didn't have quite as much of. It's certainly, some of these did still exist, but they have been the biggest in the modern day. And frankly, as things get easier, sometimes they also get a little more inconvenient, sadly.
That's for sure, yeah. And adjustments have to be made once these advancements continue to come in. And maybe they're not happening as much as we'd like.
So be sure to leave a like if you enjoy this content, subscribe for more, and turn on notifications because a lot of people are not seeing new uploads. We upload usually about 4 or 5 times a week on this channel and several times a week on our secondary channel, Degenerate Plays. We hope to see you there. Let's hop right into it.
Number 5.
The first one is reliance on internet for most console features. Now, you recently had a internet blackout, and the internet went down not because of anything like a terror attack or anything crazy, but just minor inconveniences in the neighborhood. Something that could happen to anyone at any time. Not a national emergency.
No.
No one doxed your mom yet. But it was just
Hold on a second.
an issue, in the neighborhood with the internet provider. And what happened to your console when that happened?
Yeah, so, it sounds like I'm getting interviewed from, crime that just happened in my But yeah, I basically, it went down, and then I turned on the PS5, and I even tried to start up some games. I tried to do anything on the console at all, and it basically becomes a paperweight from then on. I mean, you could put, a DVD in there, I suppose, and watch, a 4K movie. That's really...
DVDs and 4K movies are different, you absolute incel.
That's so embarrassing.
Waste of space garbage.
I hate myself more and more every day. But with the games, you couldn't even touch the games at all. There was nothing you could do. Even with games there are offline features. It wasn't loading, and there was a lot of question marks. Even when I went over to the games in my game library, I couldn't look at those at all, even some of the ones that were installed already. So really, and this was the PS5, just to clarify, but I was having a lot of issues with it. Obviously, the internet comes back on, everything's working perfectly again, but it essentially feels like it bricks the console when there's no internet.
It is worth saying you can play the system offline, but there have been reported issues with it.
Yeah.
With load times, with applications not thinking you own them, just things like that. I mean, I do think it's also worth pointing out, by the way, we will talk about more of this, but DRM does play into this as well, the digital rights management stuff, because if you are locked out of your account, a lot of times it needs to authenticate you actually own a game, or see, hey, where did this come from, things like that on these modern day consoles. And that's an issue eventually for if the internet connection shuts down. We saw that with the CMOS battery stuff. With the PS3, 4, and 5, which we'll talk about again later, but it's just an inconvenience. It doesn't even take into account the fact that most games seem to be designed now around the internet in and of themselves as well. I mean, games like Call of Duty, 90% of the functionality is on the internet? Sports games.
Maybe you play Spec Ops and the campaign, but obviously, like you said, all of the energy and money is going to the multiplayer. And I should say too, one quick thing is that I didn't even know the internet was down. I tried to start Rocket League, and it wouldn't even go past the original load screen. I didn't even get into the game at all. And it has offline features, so it wouldn't even let me get past that at all. I tried 3 or 4 times.
And I think sometimes an issue too is the console thinks it's trying to connect to the internet. It's there's a weird middle ground too, where if you are not trying to connect to the internet, you're just in offline mode on these consoles, they can work a little better. But if the console's working to try and connect to the internet and the internet's down, it's struggling on 2 fronts.
For sure.
Which is not a good thing.
No.
Number 4! The next one is limited backwards compatibility.
Now hold on, Jay. You've got to be honest with yourself here. Xbox has been very good with their backwards compatibility program, and also they've been really trying on that front. And also, PlayStation with the PS5 has made PS4 games backwards compatible. They have made it so you can play PS4 games on the PS5. You actual, moron. I don't like you very much. Shut the hell up.
While I understand that, John Sony, the issue is that it is still limited compared to the past. Now, almost always in the past, not always, but almost always, the expectation would have been you get a console, you can play the generation before. Again, there's times when that was not the case at all. But a lot of the times when backwards compatibility was starting to be introduced, that was sort of the expectation was, hey, listen, you got a PS2, you can emulate PS1 games on there. Have fun. Put your discs in. Have a good time, sucker. Enjoy
Sucker,
it.
yeah.
We want you to buy our consoles.
Yeah.
Because it's a good way to usher in the past generation of players. It makes them feel like they're not losing out and ditching their old hardware that they still want to play with or software. The issue, though, is that for a long time now, it's not been expected anymore. For some reason, the consumer has kind of bent over backwards to allow backwards compatibility to be a luxury and not an expectation from the machines they buy. And I would say that these companies have taken really a lot of advantage of that. We didn't see Xbox really push backwards compatibility until Phil Spencer stepped in and he had to make up all this ground that Don Matrick lost their company to the PlayStation. You know, we don't usually see one of these companies really trying with it unless they are kind of put with their feet over the fire. Even PS4, there was no backwards compatibility on the thing at all. All it was PS Now, and you and I both have our issues with that.
Well, PS Now is a big problem. I mean, looking at it, at first you see it, and I was kind of, like you said, I was one of the consumers who kind of felt like, well, this is great. Like, I have access to these old games, even though I don't have backwards compatibility. This is kind of their version. But essentially, they monetized backwards compatibility and took it out of the system when it should really be a free feature that's just a part of it when you buy it, because you're paying all this money. The PS4 was $400 or $500, the PS5 now $500, and that's a legitimate problem that you're not able to go back and transition and play these games when you've got massive libraries that get built up throughout these generations. And it's like, all right, well, now you can't touch any of those games. Look forward to, with the PS5 at least, at first it felt like you got 2 or 3 games, and it's like, well, what am I going to do with this now that I beat these games? I just paid all this money, and I can't access my old games. And that was kind of an issue that was at first. They've kind of sorted it out now. But the idea of PS Now, it just kind of feels like they're monetizing the backwards compatibility aspect of it and making a ton of money off of it. Not that there's not a lot of people that I know that are using PS Now, but even if there are, say, like 1 million or something like that, that's a lot of money when it should just be a free feature.
And as someone who has about 700 megabits per second, which is not the fastest, but it's a very fast connection in the United States for internet download, I still think PS Now doesn't work that great. The games are still kind of pixely if you stream them. It's just not good. I mean, the response times are not perfect. They're not as fast as when you play off of a disc, and that just is what it is. It's not good. And yes, there have been strides made towards eliminating that latency with other digital machines and streaming machines like the Stadia. I know nobody's really bought the Stadia, but they did work hard on eliminating that latency and stuff. So I'm not saying it's not doable. It's just that most modern consoles don't care to do it. I think Xbox, Series X and Xbox One, with their whole, I guess, Game Pass thing, that's sort of a middle ground, like an acceptable, I think, way to do it, in a way where you cycle out all these different games from different generations and you can play them for a subscription fee. I get that. That's a better deal than PS Now, but it still kind of is like, I'd rather just own them and be able to play any disc that I own from previous generations. I do also think it's funny how you can very easily get all of these emulators on your PC, and you can play PC games from 15, 20 years ago still on a PC made today. But modern day consoles like a PS5 can't play a PS1 game unless it is released digitally on the store. Then all of a sudden it can play it. Isn't that weird?
Yep.
How, like the PS4, for example, there were updated versions of certain PS2 games where they did the PS2 on PS4 program. It was mostly underutilized, but there were a lot of games that you could buy digitally. I believe Harvest Moon, you could buy Dark Cloud 1 and 2, the old, Destroy All Humans. I was gonna say Kill All Humans.
Yeah.
But the old Destroy All Humans
there's
games.
a lot of like old Star Wars games
Yes.
that you could do now too, right? Yeah.
And they added trophy support, and they charged you again $15-$20 for them a piece instead of, even if you own the disc. There was no way to be like, hey, I own this. Sorry, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It just comes off as a little slimy because it's not even an officially marketed HD re-release or anything like that. It's just a weird way to be like, you like this game, don't you? Don't you wish you could play this game from when you were a kid? Well, even though this machine is 30,000 times more powerful, I'd like $20.
Yeah.
It just comes off weird.
It's not great, and I think that, it's obviously a way for them to make a ton of money because you play off that nostalgia, but if you just had every title possible on your store, obviously that's a ridiculously massive store, but if you had that on there, and even if you charged, say, like $5 for some of these ones just to make sure that it was playable or something like that. Or just like if ones that you own, if you have the disc and you can put it in already, why is that not something that you can do? Because if you're like someone like yourself who has a giant collection of older games, PS2, whatever, and you're able to just put it in and it's on the store, can identify it and play it, you've already spent the money. So why can't you play it already? And I think that's a giant problem.
And I will say, at least for PS2 on PS4, the one piece of credit I will give them is that they did try to enhance some of those games to make them run better. But for the most part, it is just games running on a PS2 emulator with trophies.
Yeah.
And actually last year, I believe, within the last year, there was actually a lot of talk about a patent / trademark, whatever you call it, filed with PlayStation, with the general synopsis of it being PS1 games with trophies, which a lot of people were like, well, if you can make PS1 games and add trophies in, and that would probably be on your new generation, the PS5, right?
Yeah.
Then shouldn't this thing have been able to play those discs? They're just CDs. Why couldn't it? So, I mean, there's a lot of issues here. We could really break this one down further, but I think it just comes off to a lot of consumers as stupid.
Where they're making money where they really shouldn't be, I guess is really where it comes down to.
Yet they'll abandon those series to the past.
Correct.
Like Jak and Daxter, we'll sell it for $20 a pop on the store, but we won't make another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number 3. The next one is DRM, Digital Rights Management. There's a lot of issues with this, locking you out of games without correct authorization. We talked about it before. You lose your account, you lose your digital games. This is also an issue with Steam and PC and a lot of platforms nowadays. I mean, pretty much every platform. If you don't have a physical disc, if you lose the account you bought that thing on, it's gone. I mean, that just has been what it's been, really since I would say the internet age started kicking into gaming. You bought a DLC, generally if you didn't have the account you bought it on, it was gone too. Just a lot of issues like that, and it's more though modern day consoles in terms of everything. I would say like PS2, Xbox generation up. I know they're kind of retro now, but it was starting to move that way with the internet there, and it really hit its stride for DRM in 360 and PS3, and then PS4 and Xbox One was like the heavy hitters with it, where there were things like always online. Like, remember Don Matrick introducing that idea of like your Xbox has to always be online, it has to check in with the internet and stuff before it was going to launch, and people were mad. Now it's almost an expectation, the always online. People have just kind of been like, well, okay, whatever.
And maybe they know that, so they can just kind of like throw it in there and be like, well, we'll get a little bit of a reaction at first, but everyone's going to buy this anyways. They'll get used to it, and we can just kind of move forward from that. And that's what's happened with a few of these features now.
And the problem is when we have issues come up, though, like the CMOS battery issue, which was ignorable if it was just the PS3 for a lot of people, because a lot of people did move on from that.
Yeah.
But it was also the PS4 and the PS5 now. People have tested it. It's like if your CMOS battery dies in that machine, which, let's be honest, it can last 15, 20 years. So it can last a long time. But if that dies or is faulty or there's something wrong with it, and let's say PlayStation Network wasn't around anymore for those machines, like 3, 4, 5 in that amount of years, those machines are generally just paperweights. Like the PS3 can play physical games, but not any digital games you bought. Even if you replaced that CMOS battery, your internal clock would be out of sync, and you would lose those games. The only way to fix any of that would be to jailbreak your console. I think when we're introducing problems with DRM that involve you having to jailbreak your system,
That's crazy. That's
crazy. Bad.
Yeah.
Especially because like they are so against jailbreaking. It's like, oh, you jailbreak your console, you lose your warranty. When it's old, no one cares. You don't have a warranty anyway.
Yeah.
But it's weird how they're so against it, but they've set up these problems that you can only fix by jailbreaking it.
Well, I think that's the key word, is they've set up these problems. That's really not great. And they have issues like this where you're losing your account, you're losing all of these games, which, by the way, that you've paid a substantial amount of money from, given even if you've got your free PlayStation games that are coming in as well, you still paid for that membership and those games are yours. So the fact that you can lose those and you have to, like you said, maybe even jailbreak your console to access these things if something was to go wrong, that's not a good look at all. And I think it's a problem that looks like it might even continue if they do a PS6. What's stopping them?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And that's the problem, is it sells anyways, so it just keeps happening. I will
yeah.
say too, like there's also weird anti-piracy software in a lot of games which can cause issues. This has been less of an issue on console, but it still has come up from time to time. It's more of an issue on PC, but it is a modern day gaming issue that is worth addressing, especially because as these game systems become more like PC, you will see more and more of that, more and more anti-piracy type stuff, because if the consumer becomes disenfranchised and more consumers start jailbreaking their PS5 or PS4 or whatever, when you can do that, because the PS5 hasn't really been cracked in that way yet, you will see these like console markets work to prevent piracy and game developers work to prevent piracy, because it's a double-edged sword. They set up a system where to fix these issues, you have to jailbreak your console, but once you've jailbroken your console, you can pretty much download thousands of ROMs from different generations of games for free. Yes, is it theft? Yeah, absolutely, but people do it. And that's kind of the issue, is if you've been encouraging people to jailbreak, they're now one step closer to being able to do that very easily. And they're already that far. I mean, they're probably not going to see a big issue with it, Right. So you back people into a corner where it's easier for them to steal games in a lot of ways than to get them legitimately. And then you expect them not to do it. And so then you introduce this anti-piracy software, things like Denuvo and stuff like that on PC especially. And some of it has kind of cropped up in console games as well in modern day. And then the consumers are mad about that as well, because it can cause other problems with the game, slowdown of your machine, other things like that. It's just like a downward spiral of like the kind of the consumer and the machine and the people making the machines fighting back and forth and making it worse off for everybody. It becomes worse for the consumer and worse for the people making it, because then they have to dedicate those resources to anti-piracy stuff. It seems to benefit no one. All this DRM benefits no one.
It doesn't I completely agree. It doesn't benefit anyone. It sounds like a really broken cycle too. That's something that really, I mean, I guess it benefits the Sony for the most part, but like the consumer once again is not winning on this at all. And
no.
Yeah, that's not great.
It is frustrating.
Number 2.
The next one is console size. A lot of people say size doesn't matter. It's not about the size of the tool, it's how you use it. Well, the PlayStation 5 taking up an entire shelf on my entertainment center says otherwise. Here's the thing with these consoles. This isn't a huge deal. We didn't put it here as like it's one of the worst things, but I do think it's worth pointing out that these machines have needed to get massive in order to actually run games at high quality and high performance. And we saw this issue with the PS4 especially, because it wasn't massive and the thing sounded like a freight train.
It was not great, dude. It was getting incredible, especially once you get to the later life stage of the PS4. And given dust may have become a factor, but at the same time, like the console, once it was loaded up on space, and then you've got a bigger game, say like COD Warzone, say that's running, which now is 260 gigabytes. It's outrageous.
It's insane.
It's crazy.
It's outrageous and it's unfair.
It's unfair.
And I hate sound.
Yeah. So you've got that running, and it does. It sounds incredibly loud. It starts to overheat actually very quickly too, which isn't good. So the size of it too, with the PS5 especially for me, if you've got it on like your entertainment center, you almost like my wife is like, you got to put that thing on the floor. Like it's taking up. It's almost like approaching the height of the TV where we've got it hung up on the wall. It's giant. It's really, and I get it. It processes very well. It's got a lot of speed. But it's legitimately starting to approach, with how big this thing is getting, like a PC size.
Like a small Alienware PC.
It really is, yeah. Yeah, it's getting very... And, I mean, like you said, it's not like the end of the world completely, but it's giant. It's a giant machine.
It just causes inconvenience compared to what these systems used to be. The point of consoles used to be a smaller machine that was designed to run mid to low range PC games, wherever PC was at the time. Would it run high or ultra settings on a PC? Absolutely not, never, not in a million years. But it would be a affordable experience for the consumer where they could enjoy games at a reasonable quality in their living room. That's kind of what it was designed to be. And it wasn't that if you were hardcore, you were on PC and anyone who owns a console was like a dumbass. That wasn't really what it was meant to be. It was just meant to be a way to take that gaming experience and enjoy it in the comfort of a living room or an office or whatever in a small area. But as we've been getting further and further out, not to throw VR into this, but even the peripherals of these consoles have become bigger and bigger, and they take up more and more room. You want to set up PlayStation VR, you probably have to have half or a whole room dedicated to that console now. It's pretty crazy, and we've been seeing issues like that since, I would say, the Wii, where it was like, hey, you have to have enough room to have the Wiimote and all this stuff. So even sometimes when it's not the physical size of the console, the peripherals and the presence of the console with things like movement controls or other things like that, VR, etc., it makes it really hard to actually have this self-contained gaming experience in your living room or bedroom or whatever. It's much different than it was back on the PS2 or the GameCube. You know, you just pop in a game, you plug your composite cables into your box TV. No, look. Was the tech worse? Yeah, 100%.
Oh, for
I'm
sure.
not trying to sit here and say the glory days back on 480p, barely making 480p.
Right.
Those glory days, but it was more easily transportable and enjoyable in a small area.
The PS2 Slim, was tiny. It was there was nothing to it. It was insanely portable. And then you compare that to the PS5 now, it's a crazy comparison. And like you said, obviously the graphics, performance, everything that we're getting now is a superior product. But like looking at the difference in what it was and what you thought gaming was back then and what it is now, it's crazy. It's gotten a little bit out of control. But
it is crazy because you had just as much fun back then too.
You did.
So then it makes you wonder if it's all worth it or not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's up to each individual consumer, but
For sure.
it's also why a lot of people just play retro.
Yeah.
And that's their thing.
And they have fun still. Yeah.
Number one.
Number one. It's number one.
The final one, I think, is the biggest problem, although I don't want it to take the longest because this video is at 20 minutes already.
Wow. Yeah.
But it is console storage. Not putting away your console, but the amount of games you can have on it. It has become an expectation that you must buy an external drive of some kind on pretty much everything from Xbox One, PS4 up. So the last two generations, even Nintendo Switch, you have to buy a memory card to put in that thing if you want to have any kind of reasonable storage. It's really pathetic, I think, that you have to do this all the time. Memory cards were a thing in the past, but when we got to the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, at least mid-era where they were starting to introduce these higher, I would say, hard drive capacities and stuff, it was looking good for the future of gaming. Like, you didn't need these memory cards anymore. You were able to store so many different game files and stuff like that on there. Now it's mandatory that you install pretty much every game on a modern day console, no matter what. Again, like a PC, because it's faster to do that and read off your drives than it is to read off the disk, causing better performance. But at the, I would say, inconvenience of you needing to ditch games all the time off your drive unless you're buying portable drives. I recently bought a 5TB drive for my PS5 just to put all my PS4 games on there. I literally just went through and installed all of them because I was like, I'm tired of doing this. I'm tired of every time I want to play a new game, I have to uninstall 2 others because it's only 100 gigabytes, but it needs 160 to update. I'm tired of that. And then you have the fact that these freaking consoles have so much dedicated space to things you can't even see. Like, there is an other section in the PS5's hard drive, in the SSD, where if you look at it, it's like, this is data needed to run your games, but it's not actually the installed games. And for me, it's at 100 gigabytes.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And so at that point, your PS5 console should come with 600 and then have 500 left over for all of the other
But
stuff.
it randomly came with like 800. It's not even a terabyte. It's a weird hybrid amount. It's like 750 or 800.
But it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, they should be adding more data to make up for that.
To accommodate and give the consumer, and that's the problem, is that as these games continue to grow and get more intense and bigger, you've got games like Warzone, which honestly, like we were talking about before the video, they've got to compress their files a bit. That's the fact that this game could take up your entire console is crazy. It's actually crazy. But then you've got other games like GTA, Red Dead, some of these bigger games that are 100 gigabytes. So you've got 2 or 3 games that are taking up your whole thing. That's actually, I don't think that's on the developers of these games. I think it's on the console distributors and people like Sony and Xbox to make these consoles with more storage, especially if you're paying $500 for it. I get there's a lot of really valuable hardware in there, but 500 to a terabyte is not enough anymore. It's just not. And so you look, like you said, looking back on like the PS2 where there was 8 megabyte memory cards that were like, I think $15, $20, $30. You had the USB drives that you would just plug in. It was like a computer USB drive that was 32 gigabytes for the 360. That you could get for like $20, $30 as well. These terabyte ones that you got, like you're looking at sometimes $100, $150. This is getting much more expensive.
Oh, if you get an SSD, it's even more than that, because to install PS5 games on your system and actually play them from the drive, you need a solid state drive, not just a hard drive. PS4 games, you can get away with a hard drive. They load a little faster on your solid state drive because that's just the nature of the tech. but you can play them from an external hard drive. So like for me, my external hard drive doesn't even work for PS5 games. It's all just for the backwards compatible. These consoles should have launched with 2 terabytes minimum, I think.
For sure, I agree.
Now the problem is you probably would have had to have made them $750, $800 to make it cost effective at that point, and they already lose money on the consoles. But then it makes you wonder, like, did you need to put a solid state drive in there then to begin with? Did we need to push for quite these benchmarks? Because I think the benchmarks they pushed for coming off of the PS4 to the PS5 were a lot higher, where it's like, hey, we can't even get things in 60 FPS at 1080p on this thing. Okay, next generation, let's go 4K 60 FPS a lot of times. It's like, cool, that's neat, but like, why did we need to jump so far? Because the tech isn't quite here. Like, solid state drives aren't affordable yet, and the console market has always been about using mostly affordable components to make an affordable machine. If you can't do that, the console is generally not a great idea from a business perspective. So because of that, to make it cost effective, it had to be 1 terabyte. And it's not even 1 terabyte, it's like 800, and then it wastes like 100 on its own, so it's like more like 700.
Right.
And these games are huge. What's the problem here? What are we doing? You know, why did we push these benchmarks if it wasn't going to be affordable when console gaming was meant to be affordable?
Correct. And you want to have these games that continue to show off the hardware on the PS5, or these incredible graphic achievements like Last of Us 2, games like that look amazing, which was PS4, mind you, but like there's still other games that look incredible on this. And you get to these bigger games and it's like, well, I can only play a certain amount of games at a time. It's just not convenient anymore. And like you said, it becomes not affordable. And the console itself is already $500 and people can't get it. So I don't know. I think that is absolutely the biggest problem with the consoles right now.
It's extremely frustrating. It makes it... There's so many people I've talked to that just uninstall a lot of games and don't go back to them because of how big they are.
Yeah.
A lot of people dumped COD for that reason. Just like, I can't fit this on my console. I'm not going to. My machine's not going to be the Call of Duty console.
No, yeah.
I'm just not going to do it. I think it's sad. I think it's a ridiculous problem to have in modern day. It's sad when the PS3 and 360 generation, you know, a couple years into it, was able to handle storage better than the last 2 generations.
For sure. Yeah.
So, anyways, let us know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think are the biggest problems with modern day consoles or modern day games? I'm interested to hear that. I think we might do a 5 problems with modern day games just in general, maybe in the future here. Let us know what you're thinking. Do you agree? Do you disagree with any of these picks? Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this. Subscribe for more content. Hit that bell for notifications to turn them on, because a lot of people are not seeing new uploads, and we have all of the links in the description down below. We have the secondary channel where we play games, Degenerate Plays, in a podcast style, hanging out with you guys, and we do live streams over there. We also have an official Etsy shop with merch, some of it designed by me, some of it designed by my lovely wife. You will have to check out in the description down below. And a robust, rotund, girthy, some would say long and hard Patreon, where you can actually check out lots of behind-the-scenes content, the length of which may vary, but it's not about that, it's about how you use it, because there are over 80 exclusive videos on my Patreon, and unlike most OnlyFans accounts, I guarantee you cannot be disappointed. Check it out. We'll see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day. As always, everybody, stay shway.